What up, motherfuckers? The hater got bored, figured he'd make another video. It's pretty late right now. It's 12:30 at night, so I might release this one tomorrow, either when people wake up or maybe around midday. I don't even know why I'm telling you this because obviously you're only going to hear this message once this video is released. But yet here we are. I was thinking about a video to make because, we're trying to do a video a day. Yesterday, I guess today, if you want to call it, I did one. And then the real yesterday, I did two. And one of these days, I'm going to do like a hater mania. I'm going to do like 5-6 videos. I'm going to drop it like it's hot up in this bitch. Since my last video today, I got a few new subscribers. I checked to see when I started this channel. You can check that on YouTube itself. And it looks like I started it, I believe it was October 9th, motherfucker. So we got about 10 days or so till my 6-month anniversary. And currently, since that video, I got now 3 more subscribers. So we're at 482 subscribers. So I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but my original goal was to get 120 subscribers my first year. Because I didn't know anything about any of this, motherfuckers. Nothing, I just started this thinking I'd put out an idea, see if anyone cares, When I got my first few subscribers, what was it, the Fearsome 4 or something like that? Or the Fiendish 4, I don't remember. I remember the Hateful 8 though, motherfuckers. The Hateful 8 and the Sexy 16. You know what I'm saying? I remember you guys. You guys are awesome. That's why periodically I bring up Lars Henry up in this bitch, because he was one of the originals. I appreciate each and every one of my subscribers. Jokes aside, even people like AJ2000, that Mark, I appreciate the fact that even if he's not a subscriber, I don't really give a shit if he is or not, but I appreciate the fact that he comes and writes a comment. And I even appreciate the fact that he writes a dislike, because he sparks conversation. And one thing that we'll never do here in the Hater channel is we're never going to silence anybody. No comments will be deleted. None of that flag bullshit. As you know, I'm not very well versed in this nerd lingo. Like AJ2000 was like, oh, you have sock accounts. I had to look up what that is. And I still don't think I understand it very well. You know what I mean? So I'm trying my best to keep this a free speech zone, motherfuckers. So if you have hate in your heart, let it out, bitches. Tell me I suck. Tell me I rule. I don't care. Comment, interact with each other. Let's grow this community. And by community, I just mean the friendship, motherfuckers, which stands at 482 strong. 484 if you count the hater and the lover up in this bitch. But we're not going to count them yet. You know what I mean? None of that horseshit. I abide by no rules. I don't listen to what anybody says that I think is horseshit. We do it like we want to do it here on the Hater channel. But as I said, since I reached my 120 subscribers quite early, thanks to my main man, J Rance, shout out to him, you know what I'm saying? The goal then became to get 500 subscribers. And I'm only 18 motherfucks away from that. You know what I mean? And then the goal became, shit, I might get 500 subscribers before my 6-month period. So then the goal becomes 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So it is my hope that by, what is it, April 9th, which is the day that Final Fantasy VII comes out, motherfuckers. By April 9th, I have 500 subscribers or more. That would be awesome. So if you're someone that's listening and you haven't subscribed, subscribe today. What are you waiting for? Be part of the greatest movement. You know what I'm saying? We're going to grow more and more exponentially. There will come a point, motherfuckers, best believe, where the hater will be known. He will be known in all these circles, But yeah, that's what I got to say about that. And I will make sure that if I go up, I bring up people that deserve to be brought up. And even those that don't, AJ2000, we're not here to be little bitches, you know what I'm saying? We say it like it is, and we keep it dirty, motherfuckers. So now that we got that out of the way, I think someone knocked on my door, and I don't give a fuck, you know what I'm saying? But now we got that out of the way, let's talk about the matter at hand. Unlike the last video, this video will be a little bit longer, I feel like, because we're already at 4.5 minutes, and I feel like I'm going to have a lot to say about this. As the title or whatever suggests, whatever I write, we're going to talk about 25 reasons, motherfuckers. It's another 25 reason video. These are some of my favorite videos to do, and I know people like them. So it's going to be 25 reasons why Prime TNA was awesome. Now, what I consider Prime TNA is the beginning of TNA. I mean, a little bit after the beginning, but let's just say the beginning of TNA up until when AJ Styles left, basically. When AJ Styles left, that's when TNA just, like, they were directionless, you know what I mean? Like I'm not saying that AJ Styles leaving is what ruined them. I mean, it helped, of course, but it's the fact that at that point, an original like AJ Styles, who I think personally was willing to stay in the company forever, they try to lowball him, and that was one of the biggest pieces of bullshit ever, because this guy carried that company on his back. You know what I mean? He was one of the only people that really, really shined, And there you go. And they try to lowball him so they can keep around like Magnus and shit, And I don't have anything against Magnus or Nick Aldis, whatever the fuck he wants to call himself now. But let's be real. They were lowballing people and not giving them their dues, right? Like AJ Styles earned it. But so up until that point, that's the period we're talking about. I don't really watch today. They got some guy called Ace Austin, which is like the most generic name ever. And every couple of weeks, there's like a new guy. Like I was watching a clip. There's this guy called Taurus. He's like a little midget who dresses like a bull. For a second, I thought it was El Torito on stilts. But I digress. Let's get to it, motherfucks. And they put him up against like Rhino and Moose, these monsters. But anyways, whatever. Let's get to it. Reason one, that TNA was awesome. Reason one, the six-sided ring and TNA's identity that came along with it, motherfucks. Now, as far as identity goes, we always talk about identity on this channel and how AEW doesn't have one, right? It's probably the biggest thing wrong with AEW is that they lack an identity. They bring nothing new to the table. Now, I understand you don't always have to bring something new to the table. You know what I mean? It's totally cool to just kind of improve on the wheel. But considering that they're not improving on the wheel, they need to reinvent the wheel. They need to do something, right? Like, they need to take some notes from basically every other wrestling promotion out there. So let's start off like this. WWE, their entire shtick is they're the company, right? They're the number one, the undisputed number one. WCW comes around. Their thing is we want to be number one, and we're going to have things like NWO, and we're going to have a lot of money, and we're going to try to take talent from WWE in order to defeat them. Their identity is the competition, right? So we have the main motherfucker and the competition. And then these identities are fluid, right? So fluid, just like gender identity nowadays, motherfuckers. So WWE then goes full-blown attitude era, right? And WCW is there as well. Not as edgy, but edgy enough, you know what I mean? So once WCW goes out of business, and during that time, we also have ECW. Their identity speaks for itself. Extreme Championship Wrestling. You're going to see some extreme shit there. People jumping off scaffolds, crazy lunatic things, right? Then there was a period of time when there was all these little companies that started popping up, right? Or maybe they were around and nobody gave a fuck, or maybe they were around and I just didn't like wrestling as much and I didn't know about them. But you have things like ROH. Their identity is they're all about honor and they want to make it seem as if it's real, right? So the competitors, like, they do it, with honor. They shake hands after the match or before the match, and then I think they blow each other in the back. Who the fuck knows, right? But the whole thing was like, this is about wrestling. It's not about entertainment. Now, of course, they had entertainment intermingled there, but it was more about the in-ring product, right? And even though I'm not a fan of that philosophy, I've been to a few ROH shows, and they're awesome live. And furthermore, this just shows that they have an identity. Then there was some other promotion that had Vampiro as his champion for like 3 months, and then they had Judas Messias from TNA. He was their champion for a couple of months too, and their whole thing was they had like music, right? Every it was on MTV, I think, and every episode there was like a band that would play live, and that's something else. That's an identity. Chikara has this goofy cartoon character. It's there's in-ring stuff, but it's all these weird ass storylines, right? TNA had the best identity. Their identity is, this is a company started by Jeff Jarrett, a guy that legitimately understands wrestling, right? And his father, who also understands wrestling. And they're trying to bring an alternative to WWE. And their identity is exactly this. It's, we are the alternative. We are different than them. We are taking even the simplest concepts, like the four-sided ring, which is like the definition of a ring, I'm pretty sure. And they're like, fuck that shit. We're adding 6 sides to this bitch. You know why? Because the ropes have more tension or some bullshit like that, and it's easier or like to bounce off the ropes. Something crazy like that, whatever. That may or may not be true, but the point is that was what they were saying, and they had a strong identity. In addition to this, their identity seeps through some of my other reasons that I will mention. So, for example, reason number 2. The X Division, motherfucks. The X Division. The X Division is one of the most brilliant divisions in the history of wrestling, right? Number 1, once again, it gives identity to TNA. WWE had gotten rid of its cruiserweight division with Hornswoggle, right? They pretty much pissed on that division. And TNA had only 3 belts to begin with. The world title, whatever, the NWA world title, NWA tag titles, and the NWA X Division championship. So, in other words, if you weren't going to be in a tag team and you weren't going to be in the main event, you were either vying for one of those divisions, or you were in the X division, which was supposed to be this all encapsulating like division that captures everybody, right? And the idea, it was kind of like a cruiserweight division, but there were no weight limits. The idea was this is the mid-card belt. Like the second guy in the company is the X division champion, right? And they took it seriously. It was heavily promoted. It had like Destination X, the pay-per-view, right? Which was not centered like until much later. It wasn't centered around the X division, but the X division was something that was a showcase of that and other pay-per-views, right? So like the Ultimate X match, that would be the match that people would look forward to the most in any TNA pay-per-view where that match was involved, right? So the X division came along with its own matches, the X division, the Ultimate X match, things like that, right? It was a legit division with clearly defined rules, right? They fucked it up later. They changed the rules later, like, oh, it has to be, you have to be under 220 pounds, all this other shit. But even that was for a storyline purpose, because Abyss was the X Division champion, and like Brian Kendrick beat him. So like, then they changed the weight limit to kind of give Brian Kendrick this victory of like, yo, you took it from Abyss and you've ended this feud. Abyss can never be X Division champion again. You know what I mean? So that is another element that was awesome, not just for the fact that that like it defined who they were in terms of the in-ring style and the actual matches that came along with it, and the fact that it was high-paced and cruiserweighty, right? Not just that, but it was also something that had never been done before, right? This idea of like, yo, this is a division where if you don't have a spot, you can always go to the X division. You know what I mean? It was just very, very, very well done, and it was something that was well thought out, and it felt prestigious, right? The title felt like it meant something because there was only 3 titles. So it's like, well, now, for example, in WWE, what's more prestigious, the US or the Intercontinental title? And please don't say they're equal, because they're fucking not. They're both meaningless. You know what I'm saying? I would put the 24/7 title above them in terms of like the amount of like relevance that it has. Like, who gives a shit if someone is or is not Intercontinental champion? Like, it's Sami Zayn versus Daniel Bryan. Drew Gulak just beat Shinsuke Nakamura. Like, there's nothing makes sense in like, whatever, the mid card of WWE. It's a complete waste. So the X division was fucking awesome, no matter what anyone tells you. Cuts! And this brings us to reason number 3. Also an element of them identifying themselves and being different. Their pay-per-view model, reason 3. Their pay-per-view model, motherfucks. When TNA first started, they had, I think, either weekly or bi-weekly shows that were only pay-per-view, right? I presume that they were cheaper. Let's say they were like $6, whatever, right? Who cares, right? And every week, there was a pay-per-view. And this is how the story progressed. But as a result, they didn't have like big time pay-per-views yet, right? So all you needed to do was pay your $6 a week, and you got to watch some really good wrestling. I want to say it was 1 or 2 hours, I'm not sure, right? But the point is, you get to see some real good wrestling, right? Maybe it was $3, I don't remember. But you get to see some really good wrestling, right? And you weren't missing anything out. And because it was pay-per-view, and because every show meant something, because you had to sell every show, right? You couldn't afford to skip it if you were like a real fan. So they needed to make it awesome, right? And they did. Awesome, they made it, motherfucks. So there you have it, right? And furthermore, that distances them from WWE and other competitors. They're basically saying like, look, we don't have a TV deal yet. That's what they were saying. We don't have a TV deal yet, right? But we're still trying here, We got a good product, and we think it's good enough to be on pay-per-view. So that's another reason TNA was fucking kick-ass. Reason number 4, they had AJ Styles in his prime. Now, a lot of people talk shit. A lot of people like talk shit on the small wrestlers, the boy included. You know what I'm saying? I talk shit about the small wrestlers. AJ Styles is an exception to this rule. Number 1, AJ Styles had all these awesome moves that people had never seen before. The spiral tap, the Styles Clash, motherfucks. The little Ushigoroshi, well, no, that's more of a recent move. But the Argentine backbreaker, remember that one, motherfucker? The Styles suplex special. The springboard 450. These are things that we hadn't seen at that time. Now people like Ricochet do them with their ass, but we hadn't seen those moves, right? AJ Styles stood out. This guy was quick, he looked great, and he had strength. Like, this guy could lift people. So he was the perfect wrestler for TNA because he was someone that could believably become the TNA champion, but also was small enough to be consistently in the X division. He is the kind of guy you need to bridge the gap between someone like Chris Sabin and Jeff Jarrett, who are treated differently. You know what I'm saying? Or Chris Sabin, and then later on, let's say Kurt Angle, right? You bridge the gap with an AJ Styles. You use him as the connector because he's someone that can go both ways. You know what I'm saying, motherfucker? And he's someone that could put on great matches with virtually anyone. And like I said, the in-ring product doesn't matter if you're WWE. But if you're TNA and you have 1 hour of pay-per-view, you don't have much time for promos because people aren't going to pay for promos. People are going to enjoy promos, but I'm not paying for that shit. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's paying for that. If I'm paying for something, I want to see people do flips. Right? That's the format of wrestling, you know? On Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, you get the promos, and at the pay-per-view, you get the payoff. That's why I keep saying, motherfucks, that AEW and WWE have no reason to have these 25-minute matches on Raw and Dynamite. Save that shit for the pay-per-view. It's a little bit forgivable for AEW because their pay-per-views are one every like 5 months, but you get my drift, you know? The whole point of the weekly TV show is to build up so that you then can sell the pay-per-view. This has changed a lot now with the WWE Network because you don't have a pay-per-view to sell. You have subscriptions to sell, but it's a little bit different because the retention rate, I'm pretty sure it's pretty decent. So there you go. They had AJ Styles in their prime, and AJ Styles in his prime, and even now is awesome. Reason 5, one of my favorite reasons. They had good tag teams that were original TNA tag teams. The best part about starting to watch TNA was you turn it on, you're like, who the fuck are these guys, right? So you turn it on, you're like, oh, the Naturals. Who the fuck are the Naturals? And then you see them, you're like, oh, these guys are pretty good. I mean, they're like, you know, no one's saying they're like the Dudley Boys or anything like that, but they're good. They're a good tag team, right? You had America's Most Wanted, who I didn't really like because I always like the heels. So I was more of a Team Canada guy. But AEW, in hindsight, were an amazing tag team. They had every element that makes a good tag team, which a lot of tag teams in WWE don't have, you know? For example, they had a tag team name, right? Nowadays, a lot of tag teams are like Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy. You know what I'm saying? Of course, there are tag teams that have names like the Usos, the New Day, the Street Profits, Viking Raiders, things like that, right? They had a tag team finisher that was unique and original. This is a problem in WWE. A lot of tag teams either don't have tag team finishers or they have stupid tag team finishers, motherfucks. For example, the Midnight Hour from the New Day is basically the big ending with a DDT. It's not a unique move. It's the move that Big E does with just a DDT, or the one that the Broserweights do. It's just like a mix of their two moves, you know? Or in TNA, you have what's it called? AEW. You have Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. One does his knee move, and the other one does his clothesline finisher, and they do it at the same time. And I'm supposed to buy this as a tag team. The tag team of Adam Page and Kenny Omega. Good tag teams must have a finisher. AEW had the Death Sentence, motherfucks, which was a good name, and it was like a guillotine leg drop while the guy holds the person up. Too Cool used to do that move too, but it wasn't a finisher for them. AMW was awesome, right? That's very important. You need a tag team finisher and a tag team name. And a lot of tag teams in TNA had this, right? Then later on, they got even better tag teams. And even when they made tag teams out of two wrestlers, like they had a tag team, AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels, they had some of the best matches ever because they have a very similar wrestling style, you know? Or, for example, like I said, the Dudley Boys, LAX, one of the best tag teams in my opinion ever, like the original LAX. Not the bullshit they have on AEW, the two midget ones. I'm talking about Homicide and Hernandez, motherfucks. Incredible, like the best tag teams ever, like the best tag team scene ever, aside from the Attitude Era with the Dudleys. And honestly, it rivals that. I actually think that the TNA tag team scene was better than WWE's has ever been because you had teams like fucking AMW, LAX, motherfucks, Beer Money eventually, Motor City Machine Guns, right? Team Canada, all these legitimate tag teams. It really mattered who was the tag team champion. Like right now, I couldn't give a fuck if Angel Garza and Andrade beat the Street Profits. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't, like, neither of them feel like tag team champions. They might have the belts, but it doesn't matter. They don't feel like champions, you know? So that's what was awesome about TNA. Reason 6. Team Canada, it's his own reason. Team Canada was awesome. The presentation, the coach, Coach D'Amore, that was awesome, right? They had like I don't know why Team Canada isn't a concept at all times, right? It was awesome in WCW. It was awesome in TNA. Team Canada is a great, or like the Un-Americans, they had Regal too, but it was a bunch of Canadians and William Regal. These foreign heel stables work very well in my opinion, and they work especially well when it's Canadians, because Canadians are basically the same thing as Americans, right? So it's almost comical. It's like you're the same kind of people, really. Like our cultures and our customs are very, very similar, but it's like, no, but at the end of the day, we're Canadians, so fuck you, America, right? Big fan of Team Canada. They had a lot of good wrestlers there, like, of course, Bobby Roode and Eric Young. Eric Young, one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time, in my opinion. So there you have it. You know, Team Canada was tight. They were pushed pretty well. They were in cahoots with Jeff Jarrett, so they were always like right there in the quasi-main event, even though they were a tag team. And they, of course, had Petey Williams, you know, the heart and soul of the X Division. Team Canada was just fucking awesome. All right, reason 7. They actually showcased some former WWE guys without super promoting them early on, right? So you had people like, I mean, Jeff Jarrett, obvious people, oh, Jeff Jarrett pushed himself. He had to, motherfucks. There was no one else that could be champion, right? Like Monty Brown, I like Monty Brown a lot. He had a cool finisher. He had a lot of things. But it's like Monty Brown could leave tomorrow. You know, he gets a deal from WWE, which he did, and then he leaves for WWE, which he did, right? Whereas Jeff Jarrett, being that he's part of one of the owners, right, he is incentivized to stay. So it's very important that you only give the title to people like Jeff Jarrett who are gonna stay and not leave your company, right? Tomorrow, like not Dean Ambrose, not Jericho, but if, for example, AEW gives, let's say, MJF like a 9-month title run, do you think MJF isn't going to go to WWE? Of course he will, right? And then what? Your most dominant champion left. That's why I do kind of support AEW's decision to keep the title on former WWE guys that probably aren't going to go back, except for Jericho, who's obviously going to go back. But like Dean Ambrose might not go back. I mean, I think he will too, but he might not, or at least in the short term. You have people like Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes. These are the people that aren't likely to go to WWE until this company fails, right? That's how you do it. But on the other side of the coin, TNA showcased some really good WWE stars that were not featured as prominently in WWE due to like roster constraints, right? So you had someone like Ron Killings, whom you guys might know as R-Truth right now, right? Ron Killings had everything. Ron Killings was great on the mic. He was a despicable heel and a good face when he needed to be. And he looked like $1,000,000 and he could wrestle. So Ron Killings is someone that if he were in WWE in his prime right now, he would be a multiple-time champion, you know? Now, but unfortunately, he's R-Truth now. The facts are what they are. If Ron Killings, just the unfortunate element of Ron Killings being in WWE right before the invasion angle, where it's like, we don't have room for you, dog. I'm sorry, you know, you're a young guy. No room for you. We got to put our recognizable stars up there, you know? So people like that, Road Dogg, people from WCW like Conan, a bunch of people that like you knew they were good and you knew they had something, but they just didn't get a chance elsewhere, you know what I mean? That was awesome. Reason 8, TNA signed legitimate stars like Booker T, Kurt Angle, Christian Cage, fucking Scott Steiner, Kevin Nash. I mean, a lot of Dudley Boys, a lot of really, Team 3D, sorry, a lot of really, really, really good wrestlers. They signed a lot of them, you know what I mean? Jeff Hardy, Ric Flair eventually. They signed a lot of A-level talent. I'm not talking about bullshit. Like, imagine, compare signing Christian, Kurt Angle, and Booker T to signing Ty Dillinger, right? Matt Hardy, and Luke Harper, you know? Or like fucking even worse jobbers than them, like Billy Gunn's son. Who the fuck is that guy? You know what I'm saying? Or like all these jabrones that they're signing left and right. Look at the people that TNA signed. They signed legitimate dudes, man. Like some of these people are like some of the best wrestlers ever. Like Kurt Angle is arguably the greatest wrestler of all time. Booker T, enough said, one of the goats, right? They had these guys in their quasi prime. Like Kurt Angle, they had him in his prime. You know what I mean? Booker T, they had him in his like the tail end of his prime, but at the point where he could still go. You know what I mean? So there you have it. They signed some legit dudes, and that made them awesome. Reason 9, they had wrestlers like Abyss, who were monster heels, but were also amazing wrestlers. Earlier in one of my videos about The Big Show, I said that The Big Show is one of the best big men of all time if you discount The Undertaker. I would also put Abyss up there as one of the best big men of all time. Abyss was an awesome wrestler for a couple of reasons. Reason 1, he had unique moves, and a lot of them, motherfucks. The Black Hole Slam felt like a finisher, and it was something that wasn't generic. A lot of these monsters, they have like choke slam type finishers, or like finishers that are just like pure strength. Not like, they don't have the elements that the Black Hole Slam had, like the come out of nowhere element, you know, like this like spitting them in the air like a million times. The shock treatment, he did a choke slam here and there once in a while. Abyss was fucking awesome, you know? And not only that, Abyss was a sick bastard. He's like, I put him on the Mick Foley levels. This guy, the bumps that this guy took were insane. And he was charismatic and fun. Like when he talked, he was believable. He reinvented himself with like Decay later on. He had that moment where he became like a Mick Foley ripoff. Like there was a lot of good moments from Abyss. And they also signed Mick Foley, let's not forget. So, yeah, Abyss was tight. Abyss was someone that they could have taken him from WWE, from TNA, put him in WWE, no problem. And I think they tried to do that. They tried to make him like an Undertaker enemy, and Abyss turned it down because of loyalty, motherfucks. That's another thing. They had loyal motherfucks, but that's not even a reason. Reason 10, Don West on commentary. Now, a lot of people seem to not understand how color commentary works, right? So all these jabrones that are like, oh, Booker T's not a good commentator, put in Renee Young, like this kind of bullshit. The best commentators are the color commentary guys, right? Jerry the King Lawler in his prime, JBL, Taz, Booker. Like, of course, JR is, I can't deny it. He's the best commentator of all time, but only when he's working with Jerry the King Lawler. Otherwise, he kind of sucks. Let's be honest. When he was working with like Taz, it's shit. It's not good. Right now, when he's working with Taz and Excalibur, it's not good, right? You need, like, the dynamic between Jerry the King Lawler and JR was legendary. And I feel that a lot of times the credit goes all to JR and not to Lawler, who was as good, if not honestly at times better than JR in terms of what he brought to the table. He brought that lightheartedness, right? He was like JR's foil, right? JR was the one that would get passionate and emotional, and the King would always be goofy. And it was a great dynamic that, in my opinion, will not be replicated again. The only time that it came close to being replicated was with Don West in TNA and Mike Tenay. That was amazing because Don West didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, right? But the excitement that Don West has was unparalleled, right? He would just be like the way he would just announce, like, oh my God, a chair shot to the head. I can't believe it, Mike, And then Mike Tenay would try to make sense of it, right? It was a great dynamic. Don West is an underrated commentator. Reason 11, TNA had some of the best storylines and gimmicks of all time, motherfucks. First of all, LAX. One of the best gimmicks ever, right? Militant Latino thugs who are fed up with the man, the American, the white man holding them down, right? And they wanted to burn the American flag. And not only that, but I think they had a match with Team 3D or some other American tag team. It was a flag match and they won with a Mexican flag or whatever, the Latino flag. I think they had like a mix of a few flags because like Homicide's Puerto Rico. I don't know, who cares? The point is they won, and I think it was the only time, at least up until that point, where a flag match ended with America losing, right? So that was an awesome storyline and an awesome gimmick. Aside from other, I'm going to talk about some other ones later on, but one of my favorite storylines and gimmicks was Cowardly Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian versus like Black Rain, aka Gold Dust, motherfucks, and Relic, who was like his partner. They were these two evil, big motherfucks, right? And Eric Young was terrified of them. So Frank Kazarian has to go fight them 2-on-1, right? And he's wrestling them 2-on-1, and they're whooping his ass. He's doing a good job, but they're beating his ass. And then the lights go down, I think, and this like cheesy Superman music starts playing, and then Eric Young in a superhero costume comes out, puts his arms akimbo as the pyro goes off, and he doesn't flinch at all because the whole point was Eric Young was afraid of the pyro. He's such a coward, right? But not this guy, not Super Eric, motherfucks. Then Super Eric, right? The subtext here is this: that Eric Young is insecure and a coward, but he has the abilities and the bravery inside, like the rest of us, motherfucks, to confront the challenges, to confront his fears, which were manifested through Relic and Black Rain, right? Two evil dudes, right? He was afraid of them because he's a coward, but he fought his demons metaphorically and physically. Eric Young goes in, makes the hot tag, starts beating the shit out of Goldust and Relic, and then picks them both up in a double attitude adjustment and slams them. And Eric Young is not as big as Cena, but he's a strong bitch. And he slammed them both and he won, right? And it was a moment, they should have just gone with Super Eric for a while, but the point was Eric Young was done being a coward, right? He needed a costume, right? He needed a costume to give him confidence, but it worked. That was one of the best storylines. It was like a 1 episode or 2 episode storyline, but it was a fantastic storyline and a great gimmick. And there are countless others. Main Event Mafia. I can go on forever about this, right? Reason number 12. TNA evolved organically. They didn't do anything stupid. They didn't do anything that's bullshit, right? They didn't like attach themselves to a billionaire until much later, right? But that wasn't part of their sell. Their sell was, we're different. We know WWE is like the company, but we're different. Give us a shot and you'll be surprised, motherfuckers. And from that, they grew from their pay-per-view model to having like a once a week stream on TNA.com. And then they announced their TV deal, which was such a huge deal. Then later on, they announced expanding from 1 hour to 2 hours on Spike TV, right? This was incredible. It gave hope that it doesn't have to be just WWE. And it didn't help WWE that this was one of the lowest points of WWE history up until now. Because we had like Cena versus Orton all the time, and that shit got stale real quick. So TNA, there was times when I stopped watching Raw. You know, when TNA was on Monday nights, I was one of the people that watched TNA. I didn't give a fuck about Raw. They evolved organically. Then they went to actual pay-per-view models. You know what I'm saying? And then they became a real wrestling company. They didn't just like have it handed to them by some rich mark named Tony Khan. You know what I'm saying? They had to work for that shit. Reason number 13, they were a true alternative. You know, you would not see the same shit in WWE as you would see in TNA. Now, there were wrestlers that crossed over, of course, right? But the things that you would see in TNA were completely different. There was a lot more like team-based competition, factions, right? And emphasis on a mix of both storylines and wrestling, right? You had the X Division. You saw things in TNA that you would never see in WWE. I'm talking about storylines, and I'm even talking about moves. I remember the first TNA match I saw was like free, like it was on demand for like Comcast or whatever, and it was free. So I was like, let's give this a shot. I don't even know what it is. And it was like a 20-man battle royal, right? And that goes on until there's 2 men left, and then it becomes like pins and submissions, right? And in there, I saw Sanjay Dutt, and he grabbed the top rope, flipped over it, and did a Hurricane Rana. Like he landed on someone's shoulders and did a Hurricane Rana. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's awesome. Why does WWE sign this guy? And then I saw more and more cool shit. So it really was an alternative. Like if you change the channel from WWE to TNA, you know it's completely different. You see a 6-sided ring, and the first thing you're thinking is, what the fuck is this? Is this even wrestling, right? You turn the TV from Raw or let's say NXT to fucking AEW, you're like, oh, I was watching 2 indie vanilla jobbers wrestle on NXT, and now I'm watching 2 indie vanilla jobbers wrestle in AEW. Why the fuck would I care about either one of these jobbers and these companies, right? So they were a true alternative. Reason 14, motherfucks. Their attempt to compete with Monday Night Raw was legit and better than anything that AEW will ever do. This was one of the great nights in wrestling history. It really was. Now, in hindsight, it didn't work out, so people are like, oh, TNA was stupid to do it. No, motherfuckers. If you were watching wrestling back then, if you were watching TNA back then and WWE back then, you thought this was a huge deal. People were talking about it legit, like the Monday Night Wars are back, right? And TNA drew a lot more people back then than AEW ever draws. You know what I'm saying? TNA was legit. That episode is one of the best episodes of TNA wrestling ever, right? They kind of blew their load on that episode, but it was well done. Like the amount of debuts that like they had like a steel cage asylum match or whatever, like the asylum match that TNA had. Jeff Hardy came in afterwards. You're like, holy shit, Jeff Hardy's back on Monday nights, but not on Raw, on TNA, motherfuckers. You're like, what the fuck? That's amazing. Jeff Hardy's back. Then they casually show Ric Flair walking out of a limo, and your reaction is, what the fuck? Ric Flair's here too? Shit. And this was on top of the fact that Hulk Hogan was coming. Hulk Hogan, the greatest wrestler of all time, obviously the most recognizable name in wrestling that there ever will be, right? He was announced to be there. And the unannounced people were Jeff Hardy and Ric Flair. Then they show Kurt Angle, right? Kurt Angle, who's like the best wrestler at the time. And they have this guy called Desmond Wolfe, who now is Nigel McGuinness on NXT UK, right? And he's like, hi, I'm Desmond Wolfe. And he just lays out Kurt Angle with a clothesline, right? And that was one of his finishing moves, I guess now. The clothesline, basically, right? Because he was this like grappler from England who just wanted to beat the shit out of Kurt Angle because Kurt Angle's Kurt Angle, right? And you're like, holy shit. Like, forget about the fact that all these new stars came in here, right? Like, they're bringing this guy from ROH that people knew and they respected Nigel McGuinness a lot at that time. He was like considered to be one of the, like, they talked about Nigel McGuinness the way people talk now about Will Ospreay, you know what I mean? So except Nigel McGuinness is better, obviously, right? They had Nigel McGuinness out there and you're like, oh my God, they put him up against Kurt Angle. Like, in the midst of this circle jerk of all these new people, they even have time for this asshole, right? Then X-Pac and Scott Hall appear like on ringside. You're like, what the fuck is going on? This is all one episode, motherfucks. You know, and this is in the context of other shit happening all around us. You know what I'm saying? Like you still had Christian, AJ Styles, all these guys were still there. This was one of the best, probably the best roster in wrestling history. I don't even think anything was close. You know what I mean? It was legit. Their attempt was amazing. You know, it didn't work out for reasons, but it was awesome. The one mistake they made that day was they went back to the four-sided ring, which I did not like, and a lot of fans did not like. Reason 15. In TNA, when factions split off from each other, the cream rose to the top. Sometimes TNA management had an idea of who the Shawn Michaels was and who the Marty Jannetty was, but a lot of times they were surprised. The example that comes to mind right now is, of course, AMW, right? Everyone thought that Chris Harris was going to be, is that his name, Chris Harris? I don't even remember his name. I think it's Chris Harris. The Wildcat Chris Harris. Everyone thought that Chris Harris was going to be the guy that comes out on top of that, right? But James Storm was always there. He was always in the circles, and he was awesome. He was booked very well, and he had great matches. And he rose to the top, and Chris Harris went to like ECW, where he became Braden Walker and just ended his career as a meme, basically. You know, not to say anything about him. I mean, I never liked Chris Harris. I always thought James Storm was the superior one because I always thought Chris Harris was kind of fat and weird looking. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, like, you know, people liked him. He was big. He was strong. He was in shape when he was in TNA. But I just had this, like, he just, like, when I say weird looking, I almost didn't feel like he was like a Southern boy, whereas James Storm, you can just see it on him. It made sense. But yeah, the cream always rose to the top, you know? Like Eric Young and Bobby Roode split off. People expect Bobby Roode to do well, and Eric Young, I think, did much better than Bobby Roode until Bobby Roode became champion. So there were no guarantees in TNA. If you were good, you were going to be good. Reason 16. TNA, I'm saying, did not push wrestlers based on what fans wanted because smarks weren't a thing back then, or they were just starting to be a thing, or at least they weren't a thing in TNA. They pushed wrestlers based on who can draw the most and who can have the best matches. That's why we got some amazing matches like Christian Cage versus Samoa Joe, Christian Cage versus Kurt Angle, AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle, a bunch of like things that were legit dream matches. You know what I'm saying? Legit dream matches, motherfuckers. Reason 17. They were the first company to actually have a women's revolution, in my opinion, right? They had, when they introduced the Knockouts title, they had legitimate matches. Like one of the most memorable matches, one of the matches that I remember the most, I should say, from TNA was Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong, or Amazing Kong as they called her in TNA, for the Knockouts title, right? It was awesome. Gail Kim, it was booked perfectly because Awesome Kong was clearly the superior woman, but Gail Kim had to do a bunch of shit that honestly only Gail Kim can do. If I really, like, I think Gail Kim is one of the best female wrestlers of all time. Gail Kim was doing these moves like Hurricane Ranas, all this crazy shit, and doing it well, in my opinion, and she won the match. But it didn't matter because almost immediately, Awesome Kong became the first real champion and had like an amazing title run where she was just power bombing broads like it was nothing. Awesome Kong was so fucking great. They even put her, they had this like Deuces Wild tournament that produced beer money, and Jim Cornette put her in a tag team. I think it was her and like Road Dogg or something, I forget, right? But like in like an impromptu tag team match because that's how dominant she was, you know, and that's how she was booked. Reason 18. They continued to sign, motherfucks, big stars, right? Big stars kept coming in. Now, a lot of people look down on this, right? They're like, oh, nobody wants to see Scott Steiner. Nobody wants to see Booker T. Yes, they did, motherfucks. And there's a reason why they kept signing them and why this was good. And I will explain that in reason 25, which I've left the best for last, but they continued to sign big stars. You know, I'm not saying continued up until now, but continuously. Like after they signed Christian, they got Kurt Angle. Then they got Booker. They already had Kevin Nash. They kept signing people that got better and better. Reason number 19, the Pope, D'Angelo Dinero, motherfucks. Anyone that likes Okada owes Okada's entire career to the Pope, D'Angelo Dinero, who pretty much came up with that gimmick and is the reason why Okada even is relevant, right? D'Angelo Dinero was the perfect example of taking someone from another company and rebranding them as something entirely new. You know, not taking Matt Hardy and doing the same shit that he's doing in WWE, right? And then just having him also teleport and considering that creative, which is retarded, right? Or taking Luke Harper and taking him from creepy guy to creepy guy who has a cult. Same shit, motherfucks. Or taking Ty Dillinger and taking him from undercard jobber to undercard pre-show jobber. You understand what I'm saying? D'Angelo Dinero was a complete gimmick shift. He went from a corner man, an MMA guy, to this street hustler, motherfuckers. And it was great because the guy could wrestle, he had a good look, he was athletic, and he could talk, motherfuckers. He was great. Reason 20. TNA's affiliation with New Japan Pro Wrestling put that jobber company on the map. Not one person gave a fuck about New Japan until Brock Lesnar went there and became champion. And then Kurt Angle went there and became champion. And then that part, the Kurt Angle part, was because he was part of TNA and he had a working relationship. I remember one time, it was like a 6-man match at Wrestle Kingdom. It was 3 TNA guys like Christian, Kurt Angle, and someone else. Well, I don't remember who it was because I didn't watch fucking Wrestle Kingdom because nobody did back then, right? And I was thinking to myself, man, for these New Japan fans, this is the only thing to look forward to. It's like, oh shit, we get to see Kurt Angle or Christian or Tomko, whoever the fuck it was. We get to see actual wrestlers when we have to tolerate like Hiroshi Tenzan and Kojima, 2 fat guys who like have 3 moves each, and people are like, oh, they're the best wrestlers of all time. Oh, Kojima, what a legend. Oh, Jushin Liger, what a legend. Get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. You know what I'm saying? So there you go. Reason 21. Everyone in TNA got a chance to be something, right? Everyone was written for, and everyone was treated with somewhat of a serious angle. Even jobbers. You had like Matt Bentley, Johnny Devine, and Kazarian when he was a jobber, and they put them with Raven and created like serotonin, right? And then from that, the cream once again rose to the top. Frankie Kazarian was clearly the one putting in the hard work and doing the best in the matches. So he came out on top, and he even beat Raven, and he became Kazarian, right? And then he basically started his career at that point because he hadn't done dick until then, you know? Yeah, he had he was like the co-X division champion or some bullshit, but that wasn't interesting, you know? It was stupid. But now, once again, even the jobbers, Johnny Devine and these guys had characters, and they were put in factions, right? I can't think of anyone from TNA that didn't have something, you know? Even Shark Boy, motherfucks. Shark Boy is so memorable. Sanjay Dutt, he became the guru, Sanjay Dutt. Everyone was written for. You know, now in WWE, you have people that, like, will never become anything. Look, let's be real, man. Cedric Alexander, this guy is not going to be anything. Tozawa, he's not going to be anything. Buddy Murphy, they're trying, but he's not going to be anything either, motherfuckers. Drew Gulak, same shit. These guys aren't going to do anything, you know? At least it felt like Sanjay Dutt had a chance to be somebody. He became X-Division champion when the company had like 3 or 4 titles, which is a huge deal, motherfuckers. So there you have it. Well, actually, I don't think he became X-Division champion, but he was in the X-Division championship matches. So he was in the pay-per-views and everything like that, you know? So there you go. Reason 22. The wrestling of TNA, motherfuckers, the wrestling was superior, and the athleticism was off the fucking charts. You had people like Petey Williams doing the Canadian Destroyer, which is a move that when you see it for the first time, you're like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? I know, now Goldust does it and it looks like shit. But when Petey Williams did it, it made sense because he was this short guy who couldn't lift you, right? So he would use his incredible strength otherwise, like his leg strength, right? The definition of definition, Petey Williams, motherfucker. Little Petey Pump, right? He would do this move and it was awesome because you're like, what the fuck is going on? He just flipped and pile drove this guy. Sanjay Dutt doing all the moves that he did. You know what I'm saying? Hector Garza, motherfuckers. Hector Garza. Not to be confused with Angel Garza. Hector Garza, the real Garza, right? This guy would do that tornado moonsault. It was incredible. Of course, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, motherfuckers. Even the Young Bucks when they were there for like a week and a half. You know, everyone in TNA, the people that were athletic. Elix Skipper, motherfuckers, in a cage match. And not just a normal cage match. A cage match with like the normal narrow bars, right? It was just bars on top. Not like a platform, but bars. Right? In a 6-sided cage. This guy climbs the cage, walks the cage, and does like a jumping Hurricane Rana off a guy that's sitting on the cage. Have you ever seen anything like that in WWE or AEW? No, and you won't. You're going to see dumb shit like Goldust doing a destroyer, pretty much destroying the move. The whole point was that Petey Williams is short, so he can just kind of like flip, and he can hold on to you, and his head won't hit the ground. With Goldust, the guy has to jump so Goldust doesn't just sting himself on the head. You know what I'm saying? The wrestling was incredible. And this is before they added like Christian and Kurt Angle and even Rhino and these people that were legit wrestlers. Reason 23, one of my favorite reasons. They booked Samoa Joe correctly. Now, I'm not saying that Samoa Joe was anything special, but the way he was booked, he felt special. he was the hottest wrestler at the time because he went on this undefeated streak. He was a fat dude who won the exhibition title, so he was beating up these little guys. Then he was beating them bloody and then choking them out with the coquina clutch and taking his towel and wiping their blood on the towel and putting the towel over his shoulder, right? This then became probably fodder for Luke Harper being like, I want a collector gimmick. Shut up, jobber, be quiet, right? Samoa Joe was doing really well, and TNA had this moment. It was like Jeff Jarrett was fighting someone, and Jeff Jarrett was the world heavyweight champion. Samoa Joe was like a long-time X Division champion at this time. Samoa Joe just finished his match, and as he's going backstage, Jeff Jarrett is down the ramp, right? And they have this stare down and the implications were, Jeff Jarrett, like, you're a pussy, and you're the main guy here, but you're a cheater, and you're a pussy, and I would destroy you even though I'm in the inferior division. Because Samoa Joe was booked as this guy who, like, was gonna be champion, right? It was only a matter of time. They really dropped that ball on Samoa Joe because he could have been awesome, and he was awesome. Like, Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe, I don't think I've anticipated in a wrestling match that much, like, ever, honestly. I don't think, like, that was, like, legit. It was also because it was Kurt Angle's debut, but you get my point, right? Samoa Joe was booked so strong that it was conceivable that he could beat Kurt Angle in like 2007 or whatever the fuck Kurt Angle joined. You know what I'm saying? It was insane, motherfuckers. It was insane. And now Samoa Joe is still wrestling on Raw and he's just getting injured doing commercials. You know what I'm saying? They really fucked that up in WWE. I'm not saying he was good, but book him the same way. It works like that. Or if you don't want to do that to Samoa Joe, pick someone else, motherfuckers. Pick someone else and book him that way. There's no reason why Braun Strowman shouldn't be undefeated for multiple years. He just destroys everybody and just doesn't get the opportunity for the title for whatever reason, right? Like a Goldberg type build where this guy's just winning and winning and winning and then he wins the big one, right? What's wrong with that? Why does it have to be this 50-50 booking, right? Even like Cucky Rhodes, who owns the company or whatever, even his record is like, he's like 7-3 or some shit like that. Like anybody gives a fuck, right? Reason 24, and these are my two favorite reasons. Reason 24, Aces and Eights, motherfuckers. Aces and Eights was one of the best storylines ever. Now, a lot of revisionists and a lot of idiots out there, these dumbass smarts are like, oh, it was a stupid idea. There were too many people in the group. Who gives a fuck? Like, the reason why people think there were too many people in the group is because they really thought that Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe were gonna gain something from this. Their purpose was just numbers. D'Lo Brown wasn't gonna have a career revitalization from that. The purpose there was simply to put over Bully Ray and to a lesser degree, Devon. And then eventually Ken Anderson, who disbanded the club. Now, I think that Ken Anderson being added to the club was retarded. I mean, to the stable, but it is what it is. Aces and Eights was awesome, and here's why. First of all, their theme song, motherfuckers. Whiskey bottle, a thing on the table. It was tight, motherfuckers. It was tight. They were clearly a Sons of Anarchy ripoff, and it was amazing. It worked really well. But the best thing about Aces and Eights, other than the fact that it was like a 9-month storyline with actual surprises, right? I mean, I saw Bully Ray being like in Aces and Eights like a month before it happened. But when it was revealed that Devon was the Sergeant at Arms, you're like, what the fuck just happened here? You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, Devon is in a quasi main event position. And the question was, why shouldn't Devon be in a quasi main event position? Devon, I mean, Bubba Ray is obviously the superior one, but Devon is right up there. Devon is great on the mic. He's a strong dude. He's a tough dude. And he looks like a wrestler. You know what I'm saying? And Bully Ray was doing some of the best work of his career at the time. And the fact that they took Bully Ray and Devon and finally gave them a singles push that they both have deserved for a long time was amazing. And not only that, but they did it in this main event storyline that involved Hulk Hogan, Brooke Hogan, Sting, AJ, the main event Mafia to a degree. It involved like everybody, right? Everyone was involved in the storyline. It was a great storyline. And all these people, like, the entire point was Bully Ray and Devon cannot do this by themselves. That's why they need these jobbers who have no names or are people like Mike Knox and Luke Gallows, like these jobbers. Like, nobody cares about Luke Gallows, right? Like, Luke Gallows sucked. You know, so did Nux, whatever the fuck his name was. Yeah, Nux, right? Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe, their entire point there was like, here, do something, kid, until we find something else for you to do, right? The real people of that feud were Bully Ray, like, after he was revealed as a leader, and up until then, it was Devon. That was the point, and it was a good way to put these guys over. You need a long time to convince people that Devon and Bully Ray are now quasi-main eventers or main eventers. And the moment when Devon hits Jeff Hardy, or no, he throws the hammer to Bully Ray, which at this point it was clear, and Bully Ray hits Jeff Hardy in the back in the cage and pins him to become the champion, and the Dudley boys hug and they say "I love you" to each other, was an incredible moment because one of them finally reached a very high level of achievement. And then after that, they had their first tag match in forever, and they were like reunited, but kayfabe wise, they were friends for a long time because they were part of the Aces and Eights. And then them hitting that first, I remember it, they hit the 3D on someone and they pinned him, they won the match, obviously, right? And now it wasn't just the Team 3D that did it. It was now Devon, who was either the TV champion or had just lost a TV title or something, and Bully Ray, the new world heavyweight champion, right? It felt like a big deal. It was like the Dudley boys are back. So now these jabrones have absolutely zero chance fighting the number one guy and the TV champion, who are also the best tag team of all time. That's why Aces and Eights was great. And when people say, oh, it's a stupid gimmick, it's not a stupid gimmick. It's a million times better than Undisputed Era, which is just four assholes who are about 5'3" each, and they're like, oh, it's our time. How many times have you heard the "it's our time"? Get the fuck out. What time? Bobby Fish is like 50 years old. Get the fuck out of here. And reason 25. And the reason that you need to take to the bank, as far as I'm concerned. Damn, this video went long. But we're almost done, motherfuckers. Reason 25. Sting joined TNA for the exact reason being that they would not embarrass him. He cited the fact that when Booker T went to WWE, The Rock buried him by saying, "Who in the blue hell are you?" And then Booker T's like, "Listen, I'm the 5'3". It doesn't matter who you are, right? And Sting saw this at home and he was like, wow, Booker T is like a former 5-time champion. You know what I'm saying? He's not Gregory Helms. He's Booker T. There should be a bit more respect. Now, obviously that's The Rock's shtick. And I think the next thing The Rock said was like, I know who you are. You know what I mean? But the point is, Sting made it clear that he joined TNA because he was afraid that WWE would bury him, which they did years later, right? But the point, well, not really. It wasn't a big deal that Sting lost. Who cares if he won or lost, right? But the point is, Sting joined TNA for the reason that I just said. And this is important. I'll explain why it's important. It's important because a lot of people say, well, TNA shouldn't like sign people like Scott Steiner and push them. AEW shouldn't do that either. AEW will do that. Except instead of doing it with Sting, they're going to be forced to do it with Luke Harper. You understand what I'm saying? And Vance Archer. Like, Vance Archer, one of history's greatest jobbers, like one of Velocity's greatest jobbers, Vance Archer, right? So what I'm saying is this. If TNA wasn't willing to sign people like Sting and push them like they were supposed to, Sting wouldn't even join, motherfucks. This fantasy land where it's like, oh, like Matt Hardy should go. Like, these people are so dumb. They're like, Matt Hardy should go to AEW so he can have creative control. Just say it like it is. Matt Hardy should go to AEW so he can have TV time. That's what it is. Matt Hardy should go there because he's big time in AEW and he's small time in WWE. That same thing with Luke Harper, same thing with Vance Archer, same thing with basically everyone that they have from WWE. And honestly, even including Jericho a little bit. Jericho was on his way to being like a mid-card attraction. You know what I'm saying? And he was never like a real main eventer. He like one of the best of all time, don't get me wrong. But an upper mid-carder like 95% of his career, you know? So that's what I'm saying, right? That's why people like Matt Hardy are going there. Sting, on the other hand, right, did the same exact thing. He went to TNA because he was afraid that WWE would job him. And Sting is like a legendary wrestler, you know what I'm saying? Sting deserves better than that. So in order for companies like that to thrive, like Sting is one of the few people in TNA history that definitely did more for TNA than they took. He's not like Scott Hall. He's not like Scott Steiner. He's not like Kevin Nash. He actually brought a lot to the table. You know what I mean? Him, Kurt Angle, people like that, Booker T to a lesser extent. But these people brought a lot more, Christian. They brought a lot more than they took. You know what I mean? And that's the idea, motherfucks. That's the idea. Sting, to attract people like Sting, you need to do what they did, right? And this, in my opinion, proves that the Smarks have no idea what they're talking about because that's a very important element. Cocks! So there you go. With that being said, I think I'll leave it at this, motherfuckers. It's been nearly an hour of this video, but I really, really enjoyed it. Honestly, one of my favorite videos of all time. So there you have it, cucks. I'll see you guys. I'll see you when I see you. I can't really tell you because it's going to depend on when I upload this video. If I upload this video tomorrow and I say see you tomorrow, that won't mean much, will it? So I'll see you when I see you, cats.